Okay, I want to officially welcome you all to our pickup training for fall 2016 for Vista PSO Blend. Please share an agenda. I just want to remind folks, just like with our classes, to please mute yourself if you're not speaking so that we can reduce background noise. Before we get into the agenda, I just want to say that there's been some recent research that tells us that viewing cute things makes the viewer more attentive.
I believe it.
So we have some ambassadors helping us today on this training, and you'll see them throughout the session. I hope that they won't be so distracting that they'll just boggle your mind. So let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to talk about some new and improved grading expectations to help keep members on track. There's some additional guidance that goes along with those new grading features. We have some updates around key dates for fall 2017. Since we have Thanksgiving in there, things have shifted a little. And then we're going to go through some improvements that we've made for the Meetup, and then talk about the process for folks to make up Meetup assignments when they miss. So that's our agenda. Is there anything that you guys want me to make sure to cover that's maybe not on this list?
Looks good.
Looks okay? Great. You guys can use chat as well. If my colleagues here will keep me honest so that I will see chat.
Yeah, and we'll have a chance to, feel free to break in and ask questions, but we definitely have a set time at the end if you want to hold your questions to the end, too. So.
And Amy, just so if chat gets to be too much, let me know, and I can go to my desk and join separately and help with it.
Okay, Scott will help me manage chat. Well, that's not fair because they don't have anyone to help them. So I'll just experience what it's like. Great. Well, if you guys have any questions, just like Bethany said, pipe in. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Bethany, who's going to talk about the new grading expectations.
Do you think it'll make it better if I take this off? No. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming in. This is early for us, but many of you have probably been awake for a while. So what we mainly try to, I think these new grading expectations and sort of the way we're going to do grading now is going to be a little bit more streamlined, I feel like, because it's across the board, we're doing the same thing. So essentially, BTU really wants to know people's progress as soon as possible in the course, and if they're completing their assignments on time, if they're attending those meetups, and they want to know, the same day. So the kind of one of the big shifts is that we're going to be asking you to do that grading fairly soon after the due dates for each of those things, just so that we can kind of get a pulse, and that they're going to actually be able to go in and take a look at the grades that you've put in there. So the things to consider for yourself are the implications that this new task could have scheduling your outside work. So because we have the demands on those Mondays after the due date, the Sunday due date, that means that, it may be difficult for you to be doing this when you have other work to do on that particular day. Similarly, with the meetups, we're going to be asking you to do the rating in the gradebook within 2 hours of that meetup. And so what that means is that you'll go in and put a 1 if they have attended, and you will leave it blank now, which in the past we've had you put a 0 in. But what we're going to have you do now is to actually just leave it blank, and then we're basically letting VTU know what that means, which is that the person didn't make it, and that you're still following up with them. You're still sending them an email to say, "Hi, I noticed that you didn't make it, and so we have this makeup assignment," which Amy's going to talk a little bit more about. But we've got some guidance around what that makeup assignment is, and it's basically we're kind of expecting them to just participate, or just to prepare what they would have prepared for had they attended the actual meetup. So,
and we'll go into detail on this, you guys, throughout this presentation, so don't feel like you have to scramble to write it down, and we're happy to share the slides.
And then, so we'll talk specifically on the next slide about the after ratings, but of course, the comments are not required until the mid and end term reports, so that's similar to what we've been doing, but just to kind of reiterate that, you know, obviously you're going to be giving people feedback that goes to the students, but as far as the reporting pieces for the VTU, we just need to have stuff in the mid and end term. And a lot of you have been doing that and are versed in that, so that hasn't changed as far as some of the override, using the override feature to add those comments. Yeah, and then follow up with members is very, and sending reminders is the same as before. So we've just kind of changed some of the grades, which we'll look in the next, how we grade. We'll look at the next slide. So the main thing here is that you have to be sure that all the submitted assignments have either a 1, which means it's complete and it's sufficient and meets the acceptable standards. The 0 would be something that has been submitted but's not acceptable. So there's things missing. It doesn't, you know, it's very vague. It doesn't meet the standards that we've set aside for that particular assignment. And then if they haven't submitted anything at all, which I think you guys have found that happens probably more often than the 0 one would. So you're just going to leave that blank. So just make sure you're putting in a grade for submitted, and it's either good or bad, basically. And this applies to the uploaded assignments for VAD and OSAT, as well as the forum assignments. So, you know, and those are graded separately. I mean, those are graded in different ways, but essentially, you know, you're just assigning these to, these are the options, basically. So that's just to reiterate that you should no longer override or put in a 0. So, and the reasoning for that was just that, and many of you probably can know this, is that, you know, when someone actually submits their assignment and maybe posts it in a forum or uploads it to their assignment page, it saves you the issue of having to go in and actually make that change in the override screen. So you can just go to the forum and click the drop down and select one when they've, you know, completed it, and then move on. So so basically we're kind of just providing some more guidance to VTU about that dash, what it means, and it just, we're trying to streamline it for you so it's not such a problem to change.
If I could just add one comment on that, you know, follow on what Bethany said, you know, that this approach will also help avoid potential confusion if you were to grade in both the assignment and through the gradebook override. And I just wanted to thank Sarah, because as we were kind of, as Amy was sharing this new process that VTU has asked us to follow in terms of the turnaround time on the grading, Sarah raised some kind of helpful feedback on potential complications of that. So that was, thank you, Sarah. That really helped us to kind of think through and try and think of a process that hopefully will be the smoothest it can be.
Okay, so, and there was a question in the chat real quick, but I think might have, we put a 0 if they told us they were going to miss the theory.
We should go over that when we go over Meetup.
Okay, so what we'll do, so yeah, good question, and you're right here. So as Amy mentioned, and we were mentioning that the attendance will be, so within 2 hours after your meetup, and you'll go in, and if they did attend, you'll add a 1. If they did not attend, but they did contact you, what I think we do is we put, this is a good question because I don't know that we talked about that particular issue.
Well, so good, yeah, this is a good point. And just so you guys know, we were finalizing this as of yesterday with this, trying to figure out how to best approach this. So basically, there are now makeup assignment options for the meetups, and we'll talk more in detail about those in a minute. So I think for this one, it would be within 2 hours, it's either 1, they were there, or dash, which means they did not attend. And then when they submit their makeup assignment, they either get a 1 because it was done, which we'll talk about standards, or a 0 because they didn't complete it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So I think a 1 means they were there within, you know, they were there that day, and a dash is they weren't there. And then it can be changed later once they submit their makeup assignment, depending on whether or not, you know, it meets the standards.
Yeah, and that Vista knows that those people with dashes, whether they contacted you ahead of time or not, are going to be getting a makeup assignment to complete. And that's got a pretty quick turnaround time on that one, so we'll talk about that more. But that after you've recorded the attendance, which is the thing we'd like you to do first, then we want you to go in and contact those students via the messaging. So we're hoping that this will be nice and easy, that they can you'll actually submit a series of questions. You'll submit it into the messaging system. You could even, you know, depending on how many people you have, you could even select the option of sending that to several people. So if you wanted to, or you can do, you know, in some cases there's like maybe 3 or 4 people who didn't make it, and just send them the assignment and say, respond back to me via this messaging, and then when you get their assignment, you can mark them off as having a 1 now because they completed that makeup assignment. Okay, so similarly, like we've done in the past, they essentially want those comments. You're still going to be adding comments at the midpoint and the end points, and probably the midpoint comments are a little more helpful to them at this point because, you know, they can kind of catch people early who are still not handing things in, still not completing makeup assignments or attending your midterm. So you'll continue to document provide any clarification you can when you have a rating of 0 or 1. I'm sorry, 0 or negative. So if they've done their bad, but they didn't do another assignment, their minute intro, then you're still going to include a comment through the override feature that talks about that missing minute intro. Like say, you know, I contacted this person and they didn't get back to me or something. Anything that you can provide that might help the VISTA folks contact, you know, because they have their chain of people that they contact to kind of provide anything that they might need to know when they're talking to those VISTAs. So
I apologize if I could jump in. I actually think, Ryan, your feedback and question is a good one, and just to kind of briefly while we are all here together, just to play that out. So if you have a meetup and somebody notified you in advance that they were not going to be able to attend, and we left that as just a dash with no comment, that actually might create some problems just a step or 2 down the road, because the intent of providing the quick turnaround on the grading will be so that VTU can reach out to the supervisor, and if they reach out as though the person had not notified you all as facilitators that they weren't going to be there, that might create some frustration on the part of the VISTA because that communication that they passed along isn't kind of then passed along to the VTU. So as Amy mentioned, we just got this information yesterday, so we were trying to think through quickly, but that may be one where I might recommend we go with Ryan's suggestion of if they did notify you beforehand, go ahead and put a 0 override and put a comment letting the VTU essentially know that they did notify you beforehand and that you then sent them the makeup assignment. So that may help prevent some kind of confusion.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we'll make sure, you guys, that this is in the facilitator guide, and the dash would then mean, it would signal then that that person did not attend,
yeah,
and the PCU should follow up.
I mean, Sarah has a good point, because essentially in that you know, grading that assignment the Meetup, since it is you're in the override screen anyway, you could leave a dash and then add a comment.
Oh, you could.
I mean, you could leave it blank. You could leave the actual rating blank,
okay,
and then leave a comment.
So we need to decide what the best approach is here, and then, so you guys, I apologize that we don't have this completely ironed out. It seems like we thought we did. And so let us follow up with you specifically. I have written this down, and we will let you know after the call exactly what the process should be, because I think we need to think through it a little bit.
The comment is key, yeah. And thanks, Ryan, for raising that. That is very helpful feedback.
Yeah, so we'll talk more about this makeup business too.
And it's like, you know, the kind of approach we want people to, you know, get credit for doing, is to reach out and say, I'm not going to be able to be there. And, you know, the other thing, which Amy will talk a little bit about it, you know, we're not going to kind of publicize that there's a makeup exam or a makeup assignment ahead of time. We really want people to attend these, and then if they really can't, then that's where the assignment comes in, and part of that will be in your communication with those people who say they can't come, or the ones who don't show up, and then you contact them afterwards. So Amy will talk a little bit about that stuff. Okay, so we have some adjusted due dates because of the Spooky Blend, which is the Halloween one that starts, and then November. There's some overlap, or there's some obviously holidays in there that we don't expect you to be working. So we've provided some different. Let's see. By Sunday night. Okay, yeah. So normally the grades would have been done. It wouldn't have been due actually on Friday, the Friday after Thanksgiving. So we don't want to make you do that. So, but if you're able to just get those into us that Sunday night, then that will be fine. And for the October 31st, that's your end of term grades. So that includes all your status report notes for both the midpoint and the end term, and then all kind of any assignments that come in. And then for the 14th, that's just your midterm comments and grades up to that point. And we do have, I've been working on the Facilitator Guide, the most nightmarish document that's becoming crazy, but I'm trying to provide all of the grading information up front, including like anything that has to do with those midterm grades and stuff. And then I'm also revisiting the activity list so that you'll have a really good sense of when normal dates are. But we'll let you guys know of these dates again, but make sure you mark them down just because you're going to be setting some time aside to get things in on time. Because we will be sending those reports the Monday after that, so it's really important to meet these deadlines so that MD doesn't get held up.
Well, and I think the new grading system will actually make it easier on people because the dash system is pretty clear now, versus before we had to do some more maneuvering. So I see a lot of comments coming into the chat. Some of this stuff we're going to cover in just a minute, and then if we still don't answer your question, I'll be happy to chit-chat more about it. So let me move on. Just some other dates. You guys all received these dates already in the email that I sent to you, but I just wanted to remind you all about them. I think you're all aware that the meetups have shifted to accommodate the Thanksgiving schedule. These are also in their guide to entering service for members and supervisors, so hopefully everyone has marked their calendar. And then, Scott, do you know, did Vista end up actually agreeing to send Outlook meeting invites to students? Do you remember?
Andy had talked about it. I don't know what they finally decided on that. So that's a good question.
So there was a lot of talk about how to try to get these meetings on people's calendars through like an iCal or Outlook invite, and that was something that Vista was looking into. We're not sure where they're at on that. However, this was in their guide, and I know you guys will be sending these reminders in your weekly reminder emails, but it is a little bit of a different schedule than we normally have. Okay, so let's talk about some of the improvements to Meetups. And so the goal on this, Eric Stiefvater and I worked on this based on your feedback, as well as some early feedback that we got from members, from the member survey that has not, just so you all know, it's not officially out yet, but we got a sneak peek, and we will share that with you as soon as we get the final version from JBS. But we looked at their comments, your comments, our observations, and we made some changes to the meetups. We're hoping it's going to make them more interactive in that now members will have some pre-meeting prompts, many of the questions that you've already been asking in the webinars and some additional questions, so that they know that this is an active participation situation, not a passive listening situation. We'll have you post the prompts in your reminder messages, and we've also included them with the meetup listings as well as an agenda for each meetup. So basically, folks will know what's going to happen, they'll know what they need to do to prepare, and they'll realize that they actually do need to participate in the call. So we're hoping that'll create more engagement on the call and, you know, just make it better, we hope. Obviously, we've revised the PowerPoints. We're asking folks to send a reminder the day before. This is all in the Facilitator guide, and include that link to your personal meeting room so that if need be, they can just click your reminder email and join the session. And then this isn't new, but I just put it in here anyway. We're asking folks to use webcams because we really do feel like that helps with personalizing the webinar and also just increasing engagement for folks. So you've all done really great with your webcams, by the way. I know it can be a little weird. I did add some tips to the lounge around using webcams. If you ever need any support around that, just let us know. So we want to do a little tour of the revised meetups. I will say in advance that there is more prep for you guys, but we believe by customizing the meetups a little bit more, it's going to help engage our classes and help build community. So let me go ahead and switch and share my screen, and we'll take a look at the file. And you guys can keep adding questions into the chat as we go. So I just wanted to show you where they're posted. So obviously we're in the Facilitator Lounge here. The week 2 new meetup is posted. There's also a little worksheet to fill out. This is based on one of the activities Raphael did that helps map out focus areas for members, grab activities, and then there's a spot for like little fun factoids. And we can look in detail at this in just a second. But it'll basically be used as a networking tool for members, and it'll be something that you'll come back to again in week 4 during your second meetup. And then there's the week 4 revised PowerPoint as well, so be sure to download the latest when you get ready to prep for this. So let's take a look at the week 2. There are no fuzzy critters, so I know you guys are disappointed, but we can't always do that. Okay. So the week 2, it's looking very similar to what you've seen in the past. You've got your tips. We put a little tip in there for people to pull up their webcams. We have our welcome screen, very similar. And I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, but I know you guys will spend some time with it later. Amazing, we have an agenda, woohoo, to give them an idea of what we'll be doing. So this looks similar to what we did before, but we're expanding a little bit more about who's in our class. So the first order of business is just a quick check-in on the assignments. This looks very familiar to you guys, similar as before. And then we get to the where we serve. So what we've done here is instead of having them annotate, We're going to ask you guys to just put little stars, or you can pick whatever symbol you want, for the states where people are serving. So you can just copy these. Well, of course, if I enable editing, you can. You can just copy these guys and paste them in other places on the screen to show which states you have members. And this is something you'll do in advance so that we can sort of keep this moving as we go. And there's instructions, of course, in here on how to do that. So that's the where we serve that you'll pre-populate. I think that'll be a little more efficient. And it also replaces a duplicate activity. Apparently they're doing this in another webinar, and a lot of people said, okay, I'm over putting my name on the map. But we still want to be able to show geographically where your class is serving. So that's the map on where we serve. You'll notice, Rafael, that Puerto Rico is here. We got you in there. Thanks, Kevin, for doing that. And then we move on to this piece, which is about who we are as a group. And so we're going to ask you to customize these little boxes here. They are animated, so you can start with your first one, which will be focus areas will basically appear first. You can talk through that. Then you'll click the mouse button and you'll get your VAD activities. Little box will come up, and then your last one, your fun facts, will come up last. So play with this a little bit. I provided you some instructions on how to customize these boxes. So if you have any questions, just feel free to call me or email me, and I'm happy to walk you through. But basically, this will help people see, oh, there's 5 other people in my class doing disaster services. Oh, wow, there's like everybody's working on, you know, education or whatnot. And part of this, you can help keep track of these folks with that worksheet that I talked about earlier. So we'll take a look at that in just a second. So there is a little more prep, but I think you guys are already looking at the VADs, so you're already basically doing this. You're looking at the 7 things to get the fun facts. You're already doing that sort of summary anyway. And this is just a way to, I think, make it a little more formal for your students. So those 2, and then we move on to getting connected, which is very similar to what we've done in the past. The main difference here is that we do want people to generate some ideas on how they want to connect as a team. So maybe someone will, one of the students, as we see this in classic PSO, will volunteer to create a Facebook group, or they'll all agree to link to each other on LinkedIn. We really are trying to get them to think of ways that they can connect as a group moving forward so that they can stay connected over the course of the year. And this is also one of their prompts. How do you guys want to connect as a group? How should we stay connected? So hopefully they'll have thought through that and have some ideas when you get to this slide. I also just included some of the other social media channels so that they realize that there's the map and then there's a whole host of other social media channels available to them. Maybe if they're in the same area, they'll say we want to get together for coffee. Who knows what it'll be, but the idea is to make that getting connected a little more intentional. So there's actually a chat prompt that says, how do we want to connect? What are our next steps? You'll want to keep track of that, whatever they decide, and then we'll come back to it in week 4. So that's the sort of who we are, how we want to connect, the assignments that have been due, and then we move into this whole section on capacity building. So we both heard from the members and by looking at VADs and hearing from you all that they may need to know more about capacity building since it's such an important piece of our VISTA work. So we spend some time here going through the definition, and then we have some examples. And I'm recommending that you ask for someone to volunteer to read out these examples. So asking for one of the participants to read these. So there's a few here, and you guys can take a look at these later. So there's some examples. And then we go in and we give them the direct service definition so that they know what that is. And then there's some reflection about direct service and capacity building. And again, these are questions that we will be asking them to prepare for in advance, so hopefully they've thought about it. Really quickly, I just wanted to introduce a new member of our team who's here in the room, and you'll see her at the end of the table here, Lois. And Lois helped design this section, so thank you, Lois, for doing that. And you guys will meet Lois more formally, I'm sure, as we go on, but she just joined us. You've been here a couple weeks now, huh?
Since October 3rd.
October 3rd. So Lois is an instructional designer and a woman of many talents. So she suggested this chat to get people to activate their prior knowledge about what maybe they've done in the past that looks like capacity building and maybe what they've done in the past that looks like direct service. So they'll do that chat, and then we go on to ask them, what do you think the value of capacity building might be compared to direct service? So we know direct service is important, but we're trying to get at this capacity building piece for VISTA. So a couple chats there, and then this slide will look familiar to some of you who have trained supervisors. If your class still needs help with this is an optional slide. If you feel like they need more explanation, you can use this slide to sort of go a little bit deeper. So you'll know based on their VADs where they're at and also based on the chats that they submit. So pumping up that capacity building piece. And then we move into the VAD review. This is very similar to what you guys have done before, except that we want them to interact. So we have some questions. Again, these look familiar. We want them to share on the phone or voice over IP what are their specific ways they'll address poverty and how do they think their services will build capacity. So again, this is an interactive piece. And we're trying to get some actual human voice in there, believe it or not. We do more than just type by trying to get them to actually share via phone or voice over IP. And then upcoming assignments. I don't know why these lines are on here. We'll have to look at that. Something, I don't know what happened there, but I'll check that. So they're upcoming assignments. We just changed the graphic here, but it's the same stuff. And then they're ready, set, go. The graphics changed here. And then questions. So that's a quick overview of where we're headed with this. I'll open it up now just before I move on to any questions about this. So I see some nice responses in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing. Well, nope, I won't stop sharing. Boy, this is fun to try to manage all this stuff in WebEx, you guys.
Fun's the one way to describe it.
So I appreciate your positive feedback. Any questions about the meetup, this one so far? I know you guys might have questions once you have a chance to look at it.
This is Dee Dee. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, I have one question. They were covering all of this after they have submitted their VADs, right?
Correct.
Okay. So with a lot of mine, and it really varied, some blends were better, but some blends were kind of weak on capacity building in their VADs. So let's say we have some VADs that are pretty weak with capacity building, and yeah, we can note that, but then we're talking about that, and then they decide that, whoa, they need to make some changes. What do we recommend at that point?
If they want to make changes to their assignment or to their
VAD?
Well,
let's just say that they realize that those activities, that capacity building could be greatly enhanced in their project. Let's just say that they realize that because of this discussion.
Good point.
Which would be a great goal. I mean,
yeah, that's what we're hoping. The VADs are awesome to begin with, but we know that's not always the case. So if you know, there is a section where they can ask questions about their VAD, so help tease out any of those nuances. And then hopefully with this new information about what is capacity building and what is direct service, that'll give them some language that they can use to talk with their supervisor. But it is kind of the same path as we always recommend, is that they then go talk to their supervisor about it. So hopefully they'll be able to say, wow, I learned more about capacity building and I think we could do more by X, Y, or Z. And they may need some coaching with you guys on that, but it still is really the supervisor who they should be checking in with. And, you know, I'll just add that if you guys see any major red flags, please put them in the comments, because Andy and the VTU will be looking at that information, and the more detail they have, the better. And it's nice that now they're looking at those comments on a weekly basis instead of just every other week. And then, Scott, you had something to add?
Well, I want to start by thanking you, Amy, and Lois and Eric as well for all the good work on revising the meetups. It really, both threading them in with the classroom activities, giving folks a chance to kind of prepare and think about it beforehand, and then just all the enhancements you've made. I also wanted to kind of pick up on Mike's question about the timing. We've been kind of discussing that as well on our side, Mike, and I don't think we know for sure just because there are so many variables in a presentation like this. It really depends, how much discussion each prompt kind of generates. So it's possible. Our thought on that is, first of all, that we've seen that in the past the meetups have tended to run fairly short, half an hour to maybe 45 minutes. So we thought we had some more time to play with. If we put too much in here and we find that there's consistent feedback from you all that it's feeling too rushed or going over an hour, then we would certainly revise it for the next round. So it's an iterative process. We're aware of kind of that risk. We trust you all too. If you feel that you get into it and it's going too long, maybe make some kind of quick editorial decisions about which questions should be focused on more and which less in the remaining time. So it's a great question, Mike, and it's one that we'll be keeping our eyes on.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And you guys are pros. You know how to adjust. And I think Mike's comment is really true, that ask for maybe a few comments. I wasn't expecting every person to respond to every prompt, but perhaps, a couple people for each prompt so that you're getting, and hopefully you'll get some different voices each time. But I'm hopeful that this will make it a little more interactive. Okay, so I'm going to close this one out, and let's take a look at the second one. Real quick, before we do that, let's peek at this Excel document. So this is your sort of who's in your room sort of thing. So this, I don't know you guys, but when I taught the college courses, I had something like this anyway so that I could differentiate my students from each other and help me sort of personalize who and where and what they were doing. So this, basically, if I were using this, I would use this when I'm looking at VADs, and I would just start jotting down who's doing what their focus areas are, and then maybe from, you can go in depth on the fun facts, or you can just sort of look at the 7 things and come up with some trends. That's really up to you. Eric pre-populated these for you to give you some examples. So at the end in Meetup number 2, which we'll talk about in a second, this will be a resource that you'll be sharing with your students so that they can go in and say, wow, I want to connect with Clarence because we're both working on veterans and military families, so that they'll have a way to connect with each other in a more intentional way. And I know Raphael tried this out and it worked well for him. So we'll see how it goes. And again, as Scott said, we're always looking at these different activities and adjusting. So let us know in the lounge or send me an email on how things are going. Okay, so let's take a look at that second meetup here. And there's all kinds of WebEx screens trying to betray me. So Eric provided all the prep for this one in the notes, but it looks very familiar. There's an agenda, woohoo! We still have the poverty showcase, the ups and downs of service, coming back to staying connected, and then of course a final reflection. There's this sort of congratulatory piece. This is very similar to what you've seen in the past, the poverty showcase. And then the ups and downs, the cycle of service. And again, Lois gave us some suggestions. It's great to have a fresh set of eyes on these, on some things that we might want to ask. So these are, again, our pre-questions that they'll be preparing for in advance. So what do you think this image tells us? What do you think that cautiously contributing really means? In what situations have you gone through these phases in other either jobs or volunteer opportunities? And what strategies do you think would be best what's helped you when you've hit those valleys along the way, those sort of low points. So really just adding a little, deepening the learning here around the cycle of service and getting them to activate their prior knowledge on what's worked for them if they've experienced similar sort of ups and downs in the past. And then we've got the staying connected piece. So this is where you're going to go back to whatever they decided they wanted to do as a group. You guys all agreed to connect on LinkedIn, or, oh, I'm so glad there's a Facebook page now, or whatever it might be. And then you'll talk about your chart, so to speak, and letting them know that you've created a resource for them that you will post afterwards that sort of shows them all their connections and how they overlap in their focus areas. And then this one on slide 9 is actually an annotation activity. So in this one, they will be able to type on the screen to reflect on how they will either improve themselves, their organization, or their community based on what they've learned. And I think this might have been Sarah's suggestion. I may have messed that up, but anyway, you guys will probably see some of your suggestions woven in here. We really tried to take those to heart. And then I'm pretty sure this was Sarah, the hold on to your why and always remember why you're doing this as sort of a, you know, one of those rah-rah rallying moments before we send them off on their own. And of course there's notes in here, you guys. We kept our awesome aloha thing, which makes me want to go on vacation every time I see it. And then, of course, questions. So I'm glad to hear that folks, that Raphael's class found that little table helpful, because we hope that'll help people make connections. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and go back now to our presentation. So any questions, I'll just stop. Any questions at all about the new Meetup design? And if I miss a question in the chat, just yell it out. Everybody's awfully quiet. You might have to unmute. Okay, well then I will keep going, and we will have time at the end for questions. That kind of looks like my dog when he was a puppy, by the way. This is not my dog, but a tiny lion. So talking a little bit more about the Meetup makeup assignments. So the goal of this is really to provide some additional accountability for members when they miss meetups, and also an assignment so that if someone has, you know, their supervisor scheduled something over their meetup, they can still participate and reflect and get something out of this section of the course. And this is something Andy and his team were really felt strongly about, and they're really happy that we now have this option. So after your session, we'll ask that you post your PowerPoint slides. We would recommend that you put them in slide-only PDF format, because folks don't necessarily need to see the speaker notes. And if you need help with that, let me know. So you'll just post those in a forum, like, thanks everybody, here are the slides from today's session. And then, as Bethany mentioned, for anybody that did not attend, we ask that you use the course messaging system so as not to broadcast that there's a makeup option. Use the course messaging system to just email them and say, hey, you missed, we'd like you to complete these reflection questions, and email them back to me. And we will have some boilerplate text in the facilitator guide that you can use for those messages, so it shouldn't be too much of a extra lift for you guys. We've also provided some scoring guidance around those. So did I have a slide on that? Yes, I did. So let me show you that. So we know that this is going to come up where folks are going to turn in their reflections and they're not going to complete all of them. So Bethany and I came up with some minimum standards for assignment completion for these makeup assignments. And that is Meetup 1, that they answer at least 5 of the 7 questions, and Meetup 2, that they answer at least 3 of the 4. They are due pretty quickly, so if they miss the meetup, they need to like get on it right away to respond to those questions. The good news is they should not be surprised that there's prep for the meetups because we've already told them to prepare, and these questions have already been sent out in multiple formats. So we are asking them to basically turn them around by the next day in most cases, by the end of the day the following Thursday. Depending on the schedule for this blend, they'll have a little more time. Some will have more time, some will have less. But since grades are due to Indy on Friday of week 4, we're basically only giving them till Thursday to make this up. So they need to get on it. Hopefully they'll know ahead of time, and you guys can send them the questions ahead of time. If they, contact you and say they need to miss, you can just say, fine, fill out, respond to these questions. And then you're not required to provide feedback for the questions, so just take a look at them, make sure they look okay. Unless someone's really off track, you guys know this, you're pros. If someone's completely missing the mark, please let them know, but otherwise it's sort of a, did they do it? Does it look like they spent a few minutes on it? Did they complete most of them? Great, I'll give them a 1. Okay, so I went through that pretty quickly. Let me move on to the Q&A, and I need to just spend a minute here to check your guys' questions. So, is there a comprehensive list of possible focus areas? Yes. So I put the focus areas on the slide, so you'll see those. They are the VISTA focus areas that VISTA uses when they are having programs apply for members. So you'll see them on the slides for Meetup 2. So Sarah said up until now when they say they can't make it, I've been telling them to let the state office know. Can they just do the makeup now? Yes. So just if someone says they can't make it, have them do the makeup assignment, and that should suffice. And then not tell anyone but you. That's right. So what we're trying to avoid is I don't need to come because I can just fill out those reflection questions. I don't need to be there for the live session. So we're just trying to not broadcast it publicly. I'm sure the word will get out, but just do your best to sort of work one-on-one with people.
And I think it's worth emphasizing that, clearly there's still more benefit to being at the meetup and, talking with their fellow Vistas and with you all. So, feel free to use your judgment on why they can't attend and, to say you really ought to attend, that's, a priority. If you absolutely can't, here are the meetup questions. So in framing it, it's, I think still emphasizing the importance of the meetups is worth doing.
And if you guys want to jump on your phones and talk amongst yourselves, you're welcome to right now. I see that Katie put in a reflection just saying she's wondering about if the conversation goes on with a certain topic, if they could have a parking lot afterwards and stay on and chat. Absolutely. I mean, if you guys have time to stay on and the members have time to stay on, you're welcome to do that. You're also welcome to sort of say, hey, I'm going to start a forum discussion on this afterwards to try to get everyone to interact and talk about this. You guys are pro facilitators. Do what you think works best for your class and whatever the topic might be. So any other questions that I might have missed in the chat?
Can I comment on one? Because I saw, Raphael, you posted as well about the duration of the meetups. And just to clarify, I mean, the intent is still that they should each be an hour. So, and those are the expectations that, the Vistas would have. So really, if we find that one or the other is kind of going over an hour, that's when we would really kind of take a look at it from the curriculum standpoint and look at revising it.
Yeah, so the collage of the Bethany asked if the poverty lessons collage is still in there. It absolutely is. Yep. Okay, so a little more prep for you guys, but we hope it'll make those meetups more meaningful for everybody. Scott?
Just one more. I saw a question, I think, from Lisa earlier on in the chat, kind of asking what sort of input we've received from the evaluations that might be useful to share. And Lisa, hopefully we've kind of implicitly answered your question a little bit in this presentation, because I think some of the most notable feedback that we received is reflected, first of all, in kind of the little bit of change of policy. We realized in terms of the scheduling of the meetups, we were hearing both, from the members and from their supervisors that I guess they had really done a lot of planning around exactly when the meetups were scheduled to occur based on that guide entering service. And so we thought we had more flexibility than I guess we actually did, and allowing some variation there. So that change in policy is really a reflection of the feedback we've received directly from the supervisors. And the other thing just to say, I think, a lot of the feedback spoke to the enhancements that Amy and Lois and Eric have made to the meetups, really to kind of give people more of a chance to prepare, make it clear what we want them to get out of it, and give them the chance to think about it beforehand so that they do get those benefits. And I'd invite other members of the team, but those were the ones that jumped out to me. There was certainly nothing I saw in the feedback, and as Amy mentioned, it's just right now many hundreds of comments that really haven't been kind of compiled and analyzed, but nothing jumped out to me that, as you guys are wonderful facilitators, you do a great job with the material you have. We're just trying to kind of mostly focus on the feedback as it relates to the scheduling of things and, some of the curriculum tools that we provide, and try and kind of continue to refine those. There are longer-term updates that we're starting to work on now, not for the October or November cohorts, but beyond that, and we'll certainly keep you all posted as that moves forward.
And I just wanted to mention, maybe Scott, you mentioned it, but the supervisors, we are now collecting the supervisor's name and email. So whenever a member goes into Blend and they get their quote-unquote welcome email with all the information, there is a similar version of that email that Joanne is sending to their supervisor, which includes, it's basically the same one that they get with a tweak to the language to address the supervisor, telling them what their expectations are, what they need to do, when the meetups are, and what the supervisor's role is. So we hope that that's going to help with buy-in and support from the supervisors as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes, you guys, with this additional kind of info going to SUPE. And then, of course, for next year, as Scott mentioned, there'll be changes to the Blend, but we're also making changes to supervisor orientation to help bring them on board as well. So lots happening. We are just like so bored. We have extra time here at Ed Northwest to just hang out and do nothing, practice our knitting. Anything else, you guys? Any other questions, comments, things you want to share with each other before we wrap up? It's so quiet. We've stunned you all.
Just really appreciate the additions. I definitely feel there's going to be a lot more interactivity with the VISTAs online. I think they'll get a lot more out of it. So I'm just excited to put all this into practice. This is great.
Thanks, David. Yeah, thank you guys for being enthusiastically supportive, too. I appreciate it. I saw your chats, and they make me feel like we're headed in the right direction. And if we're not, we can fix it. So
yeah, and just rolling with all the changes, too. So we're trying to find the best ways to support you and, getting to adjust to the changes and stuff. So.
I think I saw a question from Dee Dee in the chat, but it went by quickly, and I didn't see what it was. Oh, yes, Dee Dee, that still will be something that they get on the Monday, their first day of service, attached to that email that has their instructions for logging into Moodle.
Yeah. The attendee list?
The attendee
yes.
list, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. All right, everybody. So I know that we've added a few more little customizations to the PowerPoint, so really don't feel shy if you need some help with that. I'm happy to jump in. I've probably created like 9,000 PowerPoints over the years here, so if you can't get it to work, we'll figure it out together. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. There was a couple people that couldn't be here today. I will make sure to share this slide recording with them. Please remember to charge an hour to the additional hours contract for this call. I assume Indy has gotten those. You guys are working with her on those, so if you have any questions, check with her, but do please remember to charge for this. All right, guys. Well, I think that's it. Thank you all for being here, and we will see you online, and the team is here to support you with whatever you need. Have a great day, you guys.